Alrighty. Thank you, everybody. Thank you very much for joining us tonight. Big zechut to begin this series with you. We're going to be learning Hilchot Shabbat, and it is a really, really important study, something that comes up every week. And Chilul Shabbat is something that we really want to avoid, as it's brought down that Chilul Shabbat, to desecrate the Shabbat, is actually something which is which a person could get a death penalty for, God forbid. In the times of the temple, Sanhedrin, there were two witnesses that saw a person desecrating the Shabbat. They gave him a proper warning, male or female. They said, hey, that's something which you can't do on Shabbat. They named the melacha. They say this and this and that problem. That's the violation. And they're kosher witnesses. It could really be a problem for that person. God forbid. Welcome. Welcome. So, it's important for us to know how to avoid desecrating the Shabbat, and also to know how to enjoy the Shabbat, how to make the Shabbat the most enjoyable day of the week and benefit from it, which is all very important. But before we get there, we need a little introduction to Shabbat. We need to understand what exactly, first of all, is the significance of the Shabbat, and also we have to understand what exactly it means to keep Shabbat. So, first of all, it's important to be aware, Shabbat is the cornerstone of our faith. Shabbat is how we basically say that we're testifying to the fact that Hashem created the world in 6 days and rested on the seventh day. By us resting on Shabbat, we're saying, you know why we're resting? Because that's when Hashem rested. He gave us this day as a day to basically stop creating things. All week long, we're creating things. We're creating more and more things. And the final act of creation for anything is to now be able to take a look at what you have created and enjoy it. Because if you're always continuing to create, then you never end, you never stop. So the beauty of creation is the final stage of creation is to take a step back and say, okay, now I'm done. Now I can enjoy it. Now I can have the benefit of what I did. Truth of the matter is that Shabbat is actually, welcome. Shabbat is actually a metaphor, in a sense. I shouldn't say metaphor, but it's like an allusion to Olam Haba as well. As we know, the Torah starts off with Bereshit. Bereshit starts off with a bet, famously. The Baal HaTurim asks, why does Bereshit begin with a bet? Should have started with an Aleph. Says the Baal HaTurim, the answer is because Hashem is trying to tell you that I created this world, Bereshit, but it's not only one world that I created. Don't get the wrong idea. It's Bet. It's two worlds. Bet is obviously Gematria 2. There are two worlds that I created. Welcome. I created two worlds. I created this world and I created the world to come. And the idea of all of our existence in this world is to make it to the world to come, to reach Olam Haba. And that is what we call Yom Shekulo Shabbat. We say it in benching every Shabbat. Rachaman hu yanchilenu olam shekulo Shabbat u'menucha lechayei olamim. Right? You remember that from benching? Right? So the idea is that we want to reach a world eventually that is all Shabbat. What does that mean? It means that after 120 years, a person, Baruch Hashem, welcome, Baruch Haba, right? You can take a step back after your lifetime and you can say, Baruch Hashem, I worked hard the 6 days of the week, meaning my 120 years, and I can now take a step back and enjoy what I've created. I can now finalize the whole process, which is to now separate from that lifetime of Torah and mitzvot, and then reach the world, which is all Shabbat. So really, it's an allusion to this world and the world to come as well. So that's really a very important cornerstone of our faith, Shabbat Kodesh. I want to just emphasize before we continue, I feel very privileged to learn this subject with you because Shabbat Kodesh is the source of all blessings. Ki hi mikor haberacha. Shabbat Kodesh is the source of all blessings that a person has. The more a person increases their observance of the Shabbat, whether it's in their knowledge, increasing their knowledge of what is permissible and what is not permissible, or whether it is furthering their observance in the spirit of the laws of Shabbat, which means that you're not only observing the laws, but you're also making them a part of yourself, embracing them, loving them. There are certain things that you might be allowed to do, but the Shulchan Aruch will tell you it's better not to do. For example, it says that you're allowed to think about your business on Shabbat. You can't conduct your business on Shabbat, but you're allowed 100% to think from morning till night about your business on Shabbat. Hirhul mutar. Thinking, perfectly okay. However, says the Shulchan Aruch, there's a special mitzvah for a person not to worry on Shabbat. You should have to think that everything is done. Everything is taken care of. I did everything I had to do the 6 days of the week. Now Hashem is taking care of the rest. Shabbat, I leave my mind away from my business. Again, you're allowed to think about it, but is it the best thing to do? No. Shulchan Aruch says it's better not to. So the more a person embraces and shows love and warmth and happiness for Shabbat, the more that the Shabbat will bless him. Shabbat is a living thing. It's a very interesting thing. It's alive. Shabbat, we call Shabbat Malketa, the Shabbat Queen. There's a very interesting story before we start the intro officially. There's a very interesting story with the Ibn Ezra. Guys, if you have any questions, please feel free to ask. But before we get there, just an interesting story with the Ibn Ezra. The Ibn Ezra once had a dream. His students had visited him in the day, Rabbeinu Avraham Ibn Ezra. His students visited, welcome. His students visited him in the day. If we need more chairs, I'd be happy to go get. I think in the ladies section over here. Thanks. So the Ibn Ezra once had his students come visit him during the day. And at night, he had a dream. And all of a sudden, he sees a vision. And in the vision, he sees, I don't know exactly what he saw, but it says he heard a voice saying, I am Shabbat Kodesh, and I am the fourth of the 10 commandments. And the Shabbat started speaking to the Ibn Ezra. And the Shabbat said to the Ibn Ezra, how is it that you let that book in your house? That book that says that you're allowed to desecrate me. A very interesting dream that he had. And he responded, what book did I let into my house? And the Shabbat said, you let into your house a book that says that Shabbat begins Saturday morning and ends Saturday night, but it doesn't start Friday night. How did you let that book into your house? He had no idea what was going on. But he woke up and he searched through all the books that his students brought. And surely enough, one of them was a commentary on the Chumash. And it said that Shabbat starts Shabbat morning. And I believe it said it ended Sunday morning. The opposite of what it actually is. It's some commentary that they brought to the house of the Ibn Ezra. So the Ibn Ezra wrote a long, lengthy letter dismantling that commentary. He called it Igeret HaShabbat. But my point that I'm trying to bring to you is Shabbat is alive. It's a living thing. When we say Birkat HaMazon on Shabbat, I don't know if you guys noticed. So when they do Zimun, they say Birshut, right? We say Havlan V'Nivrich, and everyone goes Shamayim. Then the guy says Birshut Shabbat Malketa with the permission of the Holy Shabbat. It's a living thing. It says that if you make a Sheva Berachot for a Chatan and a Kala, so then you have to have two, Sfardi custom, you have to have two new guests at every Sheva Berachot. That's the rule. Ashkenazim are leading with one, we have to have two. Fine. But if you make the Sheva Berachot on Shabbat, you don't need a new guest. Why? Because Shabbat's the guest. Shabbat Kodesh. Halacha l'maaseh. It's a living thing. It's an amazing. Shabbat is alive. So when you embrace the Shabbat, you show love to the Shabbat, you welcome the Shabbat, you show passion for Shabbat. So then the Shabbat blesses you. I can ramble on and on and on and on with stories and stories and stories about how Shabbat can send blessing and blessing and blessing to people. I'm tempted to. Should I share with you a story or no? What do you think? Yeah? Okay. Welcome. I'll share with you one story. I cannot possibly take credit for it. This story comes from Rabbi Pesach Kron. He shares a story about a fellow from Mexico by the name of Jacobo Shrem. And he says that this fellow was an architect in Mexico, and he built houses and he sold them, and he designed different houses. He eventually sold a bunch of houses and he started building buildings. Eventually, he started building really big buildings. Eventually, he actually built the tallest skyscraper in Mexico City. Tallest skyscraper. And he built it in a way that it was so strong that it could withstand natural disasters. It was like very powerful. He designed it in a very special way. And he did it in such a good way, such a good job, that it cost him a lot of money. So he had to sell it for a lot of money, but there were no buyers. He wanted to sell it and nobody was buying. And it was going on for a long time. Anyway, he decided, he wasn't an observant Jew. He said, I want to take upon myself something. So he said, you know what? Friday night, I'll go to shul. He accepted upon himself Friday night. He's going to shul. His wife encouraged him. Yes, do it. Fine. He starts going to shul. One day he gets a phone call from a company in Germany. This company in Germany heard about his building in Mexico City. They heard that it's spectacular. They want to come and see it. He says, fantastic. When are you coming? They say, we're going to be there Friday morning. He says to them, that's great. They say, we want to come. We want to scan the whole building. We want to go from floor to floor. We're into it. We heard about it. We are probably going to buy it. He says, that's awesome. But he says, you should know, Friday, and it was winter times. Friday around 4:30, I have to leave because I have to go to my synagogue Friday night. So they said, listen, we're not going to buy it if we can't see everything. We got to go floor to floor. We have to examine the rooms. We got to see everything. Only then we could buy it. He says, no problem, but you got to be done by 4:30 because 4:30 I'm out the door. They say, okay. They didn't believe him because they know he's having a hard time selling it. Anyway, they come Friday morning and he greets them and they start going floor to floor, first floor, second floor, et cetera, 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock, we're still going. He says, guys, remember, 4:30, I'm out the door. They're like, right. Anyway, it's 4 o'clock. He says, reminder, guys, 4:30, I'm going. Please finish up. They say, okay. And 4:30 comes, he says, gentlemen, I told you I have to leave. I'm leaving. They said, we didn't finish the building. He said, I told you. But I mentioned a few times. And they say, okay, then, sorry, we can't buy the building. They pack up, they go, he leaves. He goes to shul, he comes home. And again, he's not even keeping Shabbat. Shabbat morning, he's off to wherever. And he says to his wife, I don't understand myself. What was I thinking? They wanted to buy the building. And I told them I'm going to the synagogue. What's the matter with me? She said, don't second guess yourself. You did the right thing. Very good. Fine. So he loses the deal. Okay. He goes ahead and he continues with his practice of going to shul Friday night. One day, Mexico City goes through a crazy, crazy earthquake. An earthquake that took down the entire city. There wasn't even a single building left. Not even the Mexican government of Mexico City and the federal government. Nobody had any buildings left to operate out of. There was only one building that withstood the earthquake in Mexico City, and that was his building. The Mexican government contacts this Jacobo Shrem. They say to him, listen, you have a building. We need it. Any price. Just let us buy it. He sold it for more than double what he was going to sell it to the Germans. True story. Again, not my own story, but Pesach Krom. It's amazing. You see, Shabbat is Mekor HaBracha. It's the source of all blessings. You never lose by embracing Shabbat, showing love for Shabbat, and learning Hilchot Shabbat. So that's what we're here to do. We're here to learn Hilchot Shabbat. Kol HaKavod to all of you, L'chaim. It's going to be a beautiful series, B'ezrat Hashem. Chodesh Tov, right after Shabbat Bereshit. Couldn't have picked a better time. Okay, so let us have the very basic introduction to the laws of Shabbat. What is forbidden on Shabbat? What are we not supposed to do? So actually, we need to have a little bit of a fundamental background for the laws of Shabbat. Let's start with the following question. You have a fellow who is a waiter. He does parties, he does catering. He goes and he serves tables. He runs back and forth. The guy on Shabbat is sweating buckets. His hair is dripping from all of his sweat. He's working hard. And guess what? At the end, he gets paid cash money. Not on Shabbat, on Sunday. They give him cash. And as a matter of fact, if they like what he did, they give him tips as well. Okay? That fellow is doing all that on Shabbat. That's gentleman number one. Now, gentleman number two. The gentleman number two, he's a really romantic fellow, and he writes on Shabbat to his wife, "I love you." Okay? That's what he did. Okay? Which one was Mechal Shabbat? The second one. Very good. The first one, believe it or not, was not Mechal Shabbat. Because Mechal Shabbat means one word, melacha. Did you do melacha or not? Melacha literally translates into labor. Okay, a labor. What that means is that there are certain things that the Torah calls labor and certain things that the Torah does not call labor. To simply carry food from one room to another is not a labor. And therefore, a person who's doing that is not involved in melacha. Is he working? He's working very hard. He's sweating. He's dripping. He has to change his clothes when he gets home. He's so overworked. He probably wants to take a nap. Okay, fine. Works hard. Did he do melacha? No, not a single melacha was done. He simply schlepped things from here to there, back and forth. That's not a melacha. Okay. Now, on the other hand, 1 second. Okay. On the other hand, the fellow who wrote something down on a piece of paper violated the av melacha of melechet kotev. Okay. And that person, if let's say somebody were to go, two witnesses would see the waiter and they would say, "Hey, you're working on Shabbat. You're making money. What are you doing? You're violating Shabbat." We would laugh them off. But two witnesses say to the guy, "How could you write down two letters on a piece of paper? That's the primary melacha of kotev. You're going to get death penalty." If that was in the time of the Sanhedrin, they would stone him. The guy who worked his brains out from morning till night, that guy was fine. The guy who wrote "I love you" on the paper, stoning, thrown off the cliff, breaks into the small pieces, and they continue pelting him with rocks. Shem Yishmur.
What?
What? It's a serious, it's what?
Who do they throw rocks at?
The guy who wrote "I love you" on the paper. Okay? Hypothetically, right? So again, what's the idea? The idea is very simple. There are certain things on Shabbat which are called melachot, and there are things on Shabbat which are not in the category of melachot. Now, let's understand what are the melachot. How do we know which are melachot and which are not? Now, by the way, there are rules about the waiter. Don't get me wrong. A waiter is not allowed to earn money only from Shabbat. He has to get the money absorbed into a larger payment of the work that he does, let's say for Tuesday and Wednesday, right? He can't get money alone for Shabbat, okay? But again, there are rules. If you know the rules, you get it done properly. The guy, bottom line, is not doing melacha. He's not doing labor on Shabbat. Okay, so you have a question, yes?
I was going to rest my case, but now
Sure.
that you added, so that was the answer in regards to the girls that working in the minyan in the morning, right?
Correct,
That they're not doing melcha.
correct.
So how do you explain it with the second addition that you put that?
We tell them they should go do something during the week. They should set up, they should move this from here to there. They should do something during the weekday that we're not only paying them for their work on Shabbat, we're paying them for what they do also on the week.
So I think you should tell that to the girls again because the
Okay,
question was raised and we didn't know the answer.
okay, happy to. Beautiful.
Thank you.
Welcome. Now, let's continue. What is the idea of melacha? How do we know what is considered to be melacha? Again, I need you guys to know the word melacha. Verbalize it. Say it. Melacha. Melacha. It's important to be clear on what it is. Melacha. Okay, good. Now, let's continue. So it says, Moshe Rabbeinu, after the sin of the golden calf, he worked very hard. Hashem wanted to wipe us out. Hashem wanted to destroy us. So Moshe Rabbeinu went up to Har Sinai and he said, Hashem, you can't do that. If you want to do that, erase me from the book that you wrote. I don't want to have any part of it. I need to know that you still love Am Yisrael. Okay? So Hashem said, no problem. So Moshe said, but show us. I want to know that you love Am Yisrael. I want you to show us that you still love us, even though we did Chet HaEgel. So Hashem told Moshe, go back down to Klal Yisrael and tell them two things. Number one, keep my Shabbat. You have to keep Shabbat. That's number one. Number two, build the Mishkan. The Mishkan is the portable temple where the Jews are going to offer sacrifices for 40 years in the desert. They're going to bring animals, slaughter them there, sprinkle the blood on the altar. They're going to do all kinds of things there. And the temple is going to be the sign of love from Hashem to the Jewish people. Very important. Now, the question is, what is the connection between the two messages? The first message, Hashem says, keep Shabbat. The second message, build a Mishkan. What does one have to do with the other? So the rabbis came along and told us that the connection between the two is the reason for everything that we do on Shabbat. And the answer is, what?
Hashem says build the Mishkan.
Yeah. Number one, keep my Shabbat. Number two, build the Mishkan. Says the Gemara, the connection between keeping Shabbat and building the Mishkan is as follows. Hashem says, you want to know how to keep Shabbat? Observe every single thing that they're doing in order to build the Mishkan. And whatever it is that they do to build the Mishkan, that is what you're not allowed to do on Shabbat. Okay? Very important. So the idea is that if you want to know what is called a melacha is whatever labors were done in the construction of the Mishkan. So let's give an example. The Mishkan had 3 huge curtains draping from the top all the way down the sides. It was built out of wood, acacia wood, that was very long. It was like a rectangle, very long, kind of narrow, and lots of beams of wood, and in the back also wood. So 2 sides of wood and the back wood, and it had these huge curtains that draped down on 3 sides, on the top and both sides. Clear? Yes? Okay.
What was it for?
The Mishkan had, this is the temple in the desert. So it had these huge 3 layers of curtains. Okay.
The parochet.
No, the parochet was in the Mishkan, in the actual sanctuary. This is the curtains that surrounded the Mishkan. Okay. Now, these curtains were beautiful. I'm trying to think about pictures here in Chumashim, probably. But we'll get to that later. So
I have it in my phone.
you have it also. Okay, we'll get to it later. Fine. The point is, these curtains were beautiful. They had lots of colors. And in order to create colors, you need dyes. Dyes are made from plants. And there are certain plants that if you take them and you crush them and you make them into a powder and you mix them with liquid and you make them into a paste, then you cook them, they will produce beautiful color for you. And that process of making the dyes was very, very important for the process of these curtains. So for example, in order to make these dyes, you first of all had to plow the area so that the soil is fertile and it's soft and you could put a seed in it, right? If you don't plow, then you can't really grow anything. So first thing, you have to plow the area around it. That's what they did. Then they planted seeds. They put the seeds in the ground. So that's another job called planting. Then you have another job, which is once it grows, you have to cut it from the ground and you have to take them, you have to harvest them. It's another melacha. Then you have to get rid of all the junk from them. They have a lot of stones, they have pebbles, things that are not necessary, they don't need to be there. So you have to get rid of all that stuff.
You have to plant the seeds and then what else?
You have to plow the ground, you have to plant the seeds, and you have to harvest whatever grows. Then you have to get rid of all the junk from there. And there were different methods of getting rid of junk. Sometimes they would throw up the plants in the air, and the wind would take away all of the light things, and the heavier things would sink to the bottom. Sometimes they would use sifters for whatever they needed for seeds and things like that. So each thing was a job. Each thing was a separate labor. So the idea is every single one of those labors is one of the labors that is forbidden to do on Shabbat. Forbidden to be done on Shabbat. Clear?
So that was just for dyeing the curtains.
Just for dyeing the curtains.
The plowing, the plant, just
Exactly.
to
Exactly. I'll make my point a little bit clearer. A lady once asked myself and my wife one time, we were somewhere for Shabbat. She wanted to put some kind of kettle on the hot plate with some nice smelling fragrance. Some kind of thing that when you put it on, when you turn it on, the steam comes out, produces like a very nice smell. So she asked us if we could do it. So I told her, why would you be allowed to do that? You can't cook the thing on Shabbat, you can't produce steam on Shabbat. So she said, yeah, but it's not cooking, it's not food, right? So I said, who decided that cooking is related to food? The real cooking, actually in the Mishkan, was to produce dyes, to make nice colors of, for the curtain, and nothing to do with food. You understand? So it's a misconception that these things have to do with food. I mean, we're Jews, most of the things that have to do with us, they relate to food. So we think of things in terms of food. But the truth is, the actual thing has nothing to do with food, if you look at it from this perspective.
So that's why we can't cook. Like, I never thought of that.
Yeah, that's why we can't cook, because part of the making of the dyes on for the construction of the Mishkan involved taking these plants. First of all, you had to crush them also. You had to clean them out. You had to harvest them. You had to crush them, make them into a powder. That's why we don't grind on Shabbat, right? That's the melacha of tochen, of grinding. Then they mixed it with water. They made it thick. So it was like a dough, almost like. And then they would cook it, right? Which I'm making it sound like you're turning a knob. It's not a knob. They had to make fire and, whatever. And then, which is the melacha of making fire. And then they had to actually.
Why we can't make baby syrup. We can't.
Correct. That's called lush. That's called kneading. Exactly. You understand? And then they cooked it. They made it into a liquid. They cooked it. You understand? So that's why we can't cook on Shabbat. And that's just one area. That was one area of melachot. Then there's another area. First of all, they had to get wool for the curtains. So you had to go to the sheep. You had to shear the wool off the sheep. That's why we can't cut our hair. That's why we can't cut our nails on Shabbat, because that's called shearing, right? Then they had to take the wool off of the sheep, and they had to comb it so that it should be nice and smooth and take out all the junk from it. And they had to spin it into thread, and they had to take it and weave it. All these different things in order to go ahead and to build the Mishkan. Curtains needed to be sewn together, or if there was a tear, the Gemara says they had to put it back together and sew it together. Every little thing had something to do with the construction of the Mishkan. The beams of wood had to be banged together to come together as one item. So this is the general understanding of what was done to build the Mishkan. So far, so good. Any questions? You have a question?
So there is no connection to the actual services in the Mishkan. It's only the construction.
So that's a great question. The answer is, I'm telling you Rashi's opinion. But there's another one. The other opinion actually is the opinion of Rav Hai Gaon. Rav Hai Gaon says that it has to do actually with the services of the temple. So you're on target. I'm telling you over Rashi. But Rav Hai Gaon says that it does have to do with certain services that were in the temple itself. So if you heard that one, then that's also correct. It's also true. Only. In his view, only. According to Rashi, it's the construction.
So then how would the fixing the curtains, right? How would that be the same?
Because according to him, he would say that they had in the service of the temple, they made the showbread for the shulchan, which has to do with kneading, and it has to everything. He would have a different list of stuff that was done in the Mishkan in the service of the temple.
And are the melachas the same names according to him?
Yes.
So the same list of
Yes.
names? So just different actions
Yes,
constitute the different melachas.
Exactly.
Okay.
exactly.
It
All
has
right,
to do
clear?
with services.
According to Rav Haigon, it has to do with the services of the temple. So far, so good? We have any other questions? We're good? Okay, beautiful. What time is it? Okay, beautiful, we have time. Excellent. Okay, so now that we have the understanding of that, so what was the first melacha? By the way, it's brought down, very interesting. The Gemara says that if you count the amount of times it says the word melacha in the Torah, you'll get 39, which is very cool. Rabbi Yehuda learns it from a different pasuk. He says that when Moshe Rabbeinu came down from Har Sinai, he told the Jewish people, "Ele hadvarim asher tzivah Hashem." These are the words that Hashem commanded. So he says, "Ele" in gematria, "ele," which means these, is Aleph is 1, Lamed is 30, so it's 31, plus Hey is 5, it's 36. Now, Devarim means things. Things means automatically 2, because it's not one thing, it's 2 things. So 36 plus 2 is 38. And he says the extra Hey, Hadivarim means these are the things, the is another one, so that's 39. That's how Rabbi Yehuda learns 39 as well. But the point is that there are 39 melachot that cannot be done on Shabbat. Now, it's important to mention as well that these 39 melachot are the primary melachot, what we would call avot melachot, the primary category of melachot. What that means is that they're the general melachot. They're the melachot that are the general concept, but it's not limited to just that specifically. So for example, the first melacha is zorea. Zorea means planting. Like we said, they had to plant the seeds for the dyes. So you cannot take a seed and put it in the ground and plant it on Shabbat. That is the first melacha of the 39 melachot on Shabbat. But it's not limited to that. That's the concept. But if you do an action that is tantamount, to the same idea, in other words, it's accomplishing the same thing, although it's not identical in act, in other words, it's not taking a seed and putting it in the ground, but it's doing the same thing, that is also going to be considered a melacha on the same level. It's just the name, it's just the semantics, just what do you call it? It's not called the father melacha, it's called the offspring, it's called the toladot, the children, the offshoots of that melacha. So for example, if let's say that I'm not taking a seed and putting it in the ground, but I'm doing something very similar. I'm taking a tree and I'm planting it in the ground, or I'm aiding in any form to the growth of a plant. Let's say, you know what, that example was actually, the Gemara calls that also like planting. It's the same thing. So I'll give you a different one. Let's say I take my plant, I want it to grow well, and on Shabbat, I move it from a dark room to a room I take it right to the window so that the sunlight hits it and it should grow. Okay? That is also called zorea. That's called planting on Shabbat. What do you mean? I didn't plant nothing. Yeah, but you helped something to grow.
So putting
Right?
water in a vase.
Putting water in a vase in order that it should grow is zorea.
What if
Again,
you
I'm
just
not
put-
planting it. It's already planted. It's already in the ground. But assisting, helping it to grow is the tolada, is the offshoot, is the child, so to say, of the primary category melacha. Is that clear?
So are
Yeah.
you not allowed to choose? Let's say you have a bouquet of flowers and the water isn't so clean. Can you take the flowers out?
Okay, we're gonna get there. We're gonna get there. All right, now we're just in general thing. We're gonna get there. Don't worry. Yes or no? We're clear? So far, so good? Yes. That's a great question. So moving a plant also involves different things. We're gonna get to that too. It depends on if there's a hole there, if there's no hole on the bottom, a whole big thing. No pun intended. Okay, fine, good. Let's continue. So that's the concept of avot and toladot. You should know that toladot are just as severe as avot. There's no difference. It's just the name thing. The fact that it's not identical to what was done in the Mishkan makes it no less significant because it's the concept we care about. In the Mishkan, they planted, meaning they caused things to grow, to be created. So therefore, we cannot do anything that will assist in the creation of the item, in the growth of the plant. Let's say I spray, I don't know, insecticide so that no bugs kill the tree. That's also called helping the tree to grow. Let's say I prune the tree. Let's say I help the tree, I help strengthen the tree. Anything that's going to be involved in that, in helping the tree to grow, will be considered an offshoot of Zoreh.
Did you get stoned for this?
Yes, for the Toladot, yes, you would. They would tell you, you just did melacha, whatever, or you're about to do this melacha X, Y, Z. If you do that, you're gonna get stoned. And then, it's very hard to actually get stoned because you have to acknowledge the warning. You have to say, okay, and I'm doing it anyway, and then do it anyway. So a guy with a little bit of brains, he'll say, oh, sorry, whatever, back off, and that's it. No harm done. Yeah, or just not even listen. Yeah.
Let's say people eat seeds, sunflower seeds.
Yeah.
And there is like seeds among them, and they get up and the seeds on them, it falls like this. On the
Yeah,
ground.
that's a great question. Excellent. We're going to talk about that. We're going to get there very shortly. Very good. 100%. Okay, but just the idea so far about the concept of melachot needs to be clear. Now, before we move on, it's important to be aware that not only did they have melachot, like we're talking about, but the rabbis introduced other things as well. The rabbis were very concerned that we might do things that would lead us to melacha. And therefore they forbade certain things. I'll give you the most famous one. You should, muktzeh is 100%, that's great. Muktzeh is excellent. I want to talk about a different one, but you're right. Muktzeh is totally rabbinic. Muktzeh is something which does not exist in the Torah at all. Let's say there's, I don't know, a hammer on the floor, or a hammer, I left my hammer outside and I don't want people to steal it. Can I take it and bring it inside? The answer is no. Why? A hammer is muktzeh. You can't move a hammer. Where is it said in the Torah? Absolutely nowhere. Again, provided there's an eruv. There's an eruv, then you're allowed to carry things. And now you should be allowed to carry this. No, you can't. Why? Because it's muktzeh. What is muktzeh? The rabbi said there are certain things we don't want you moving, because if you move them, either you may come to carry them, which is one of the melachot, carrying from one domain to the other, or you may come to do a forbidden act with them, and therefore we say you cannot move them. Totally rabbinic, completely rabbinic. Now, what I want to talk about is running your business on Shabbat. Running your business on Shabbat is 100% mutar according to the Torah level of the law. There's absolutely nothing wrong with me selling something to you and you buying it from me, handing me money. I'm telling you, it's 100% rabbinic. There is not one place in the whole Torah that it says that you cannot have your business open on Shabbat.
That's getting very complicated.
No, it's actually quite simple.
It says Hashem created for 6 days.
Yes.
7 days, he rests.
Oh.
You're running a business.
Again, so there you go. So what's called resting? Not doing melacha, right? Melacha. This is not melacha. Here you're coming to my, let's say, I don't know, my store. You're in a private domain. You want to purchase, I don't know, a shirt. You buy the shirt. You give me money. You didn't do one single melacha.
And so
You did.
please-
What? So why is it forbidden to sell and to buy and to do all these things on Shabbat?
In fear that we are going
In
to
fear of what? As I'll say, because usually people, when they sell things, they take inventory. And they were afraid you're going to write down what you sold.
So
So the whole
we have
reason
such a
that you
wrong
can't do
concept.
business on Shabbat is why? Because you might come to write. And oy va'avoy if you write. Chas v'shalom if you write something down.
But then if
Huh?
you buy something, it's not gonna cause you to take inventory.
Yeah, but the seller will. Whoever sold it to you will.
It could be a void.
Okay.
So why can't we
Okay.
buy?
The
That's
whole
like a
idea of buying and selling, the rabbis put a blanket isur on all of it. Why? At least according to one explanation, because you may come to write.
But there are
Okay.
plenty of businesses
But-
that are like things that run on Shabbat.
What's that?
Like, let's say someone made an app, someone buys it on Shabbat.
Right. Very good. That's already a separate. That's like passive income on Shabbat, right? That's a different story. That's a good question. It depends on a lot of circumstances. But again, what I'm trying to just bring out is that the rabbinic rules of what we call shvut, things that the rabbis said are forbidden to do on Shabbat, they are life-changing. And remember another important thing. The same Torah that told us to keep Shabbat told us that you have to listen to what the Chachamim tell you to do. So when we keep Muktzeh, we're keeping Muktzeh because Hashem told us to keep Muktzeh. On Yom Kippur, I don't know if you guys noticed, in the great vidui of Rabbi Ben Kaniel, which we say on Shacharit, at least I think most shuls say in Shacharit in the morning, we say Hashem, Nubalan, etc. One of the things that we talk about is Tiltalnu Muktzeh b'yom, so we moved Muktzeh on Forbidden Day, right? That is totally rabbinic, but we treat it like Hashem told it to us. Why? Because you realize that, right? You go and you make a blessing on Hanukkah candles. What do you say? What's the bracha? Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam asher kideshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu lehadlik ner Chanukah. What is the translation of that? Blessed are you, Hashem, Master of the universe, who has sanctified us with His commandments and commanded us to light Chanukah candles. And I ask you, where on earth did Hashem command us to light Chanukah candles? Right? How do they say it? Everyone here speaks Farsi. Right? I think the question is, as kojam idunim, right? Right? From where do we know that you are not allowed, that you're supposed to light Hanukkah candles? Right? Where does it say that? Answer is, it doesn't say it anywhere. Right? So what does it say? It says, Lo tasur min hadavar asher yagid lecha yamin u'smol. What the rabbis tell you to do, you don't veer off left or right. So we have a tradition from our rabbis that they're instructing us, comes Hanukkah, you light Hanukkah candles. We look at that as if Hashem told us to light Hanukkah candles, right? Very important. And by the way, you should know, Muktzeh is ancient. You know the first source that I know of Muktzeh? David HaMelech died on Shavuot, right? He died on Shavuot. Shlomo, where did he die? He died outside. He was outdoors. What happened was he was learning the whole time, and the Yetzer Hara made him stop. He made a big noise outside. He went to check it out, and that's when Malach HaMavet got him, because he stopped learning for a moment. So he dropped dead outside. So Shlomo HaMelech didn't know what to do. It's a dead body. Dead body is Muktzeh. Can't move it, but he's going to decompose. He's going to rot outside. It's not kavod for the Melech. So he sent a question to the Sanhedrin. What do you do? What should I do with my father? He's outside in the sunlight. He's going to, God forbid, decompose. They told him there's a special heter for this. That if the rabbis made a leniency, if you put a loaf of bread on him, so then he becomes secondary to the loaf of bread, and you can move him on account of the bread that you put on him. They gave a heter for him, right? So, okay, good. But you see that Muktzeh is ancient. Where it's not like, okay, some rabbi from, 20 years ago made up something, and now it's an ancient thing. It's important to be aware of these things. So now,
Can we put a piece of bread on a toy that's in our life?
so this was only for, by the way, toys are not necessarily Muktzeh. And we're going to learn that there are some Muktzehs that if they're in your way, you're allowed to move, regardless of, but the idea of the bread is only for, God forbid, a dead person.
Can I ask a question?
Yes,
Maybe it's extreme.
yes,
But you say when it comes to sell or buy house in Israel, you're allowed to
correct.
work on Shabbat and
Beautiful.
even sign in different.
Yeah, so you're saying correct. The idea of signing is a big question, right? It does say that, but everybody goes nuts. What do you mean signing?
Yeah.
I'm talking even the poskim go crazy about what does it mean signing. So it says if you sign in a different language, that's the what the Shulchan Aruch says. But even that is a whole big question. We would never do that practically. I mean, usually speaking, why would you do that? Buy a house on Sunday. It's not right. But you're right. There is such, unless there is
Are we not
such a
to
thing.
talk about house in Israel on Shabbat?
For a mitzvah, yeah.
Yeah.
For a mitzvah, yes. Yes. Tzorchei mitzvah. Okay, but what I wanted to just bring to your attention is another couple of important points before we start actually the halachot. Let's go back to the Mishkan, because in order to understand Hilchot Shabbat, a lot of leniencies come up and a lot of different scenarios there are lots of differences depending on many factors. And I would like to explain what I'm trying to say. In the Mishkan, one general theme is they were trying to build the Mishkan, which means that everything that they did was a premeditated labor. They intended on doing what they were about to do. That means if, let's say, you had a fisherman, he's going right now to catch the chilazon fish / snail that has the blue blood so that they could catch it and then tear it open and use its blood for the blue color that's going to be used on the wool to make this blue curtain. Fine, beautiful. Okay, so this fisherman is now making a net. So that's the act of, let's say, sewing. This guy is now going to trap the chilazon fish. That's the act of trapping. He's now going to he's going to kill the fish. That's the act of killing. And every little thing that he's doing is another melacha, which he absolutely meant to do. He intended on doing it. Okay. That is a very important thing in the laws of Shabbat. Because what that means for us, as far as we're concerned, is that if you don't intend to do what you are doing, so automatically it's a different action than what they did in Mishkan, even if it accomplished the same thing. So for example, you didn't realize, again, the guy took the fish, the chilazon fish / snail, he killed it, took the blood, and colored the wool with it. Okay. You're wearing a shoe that is wool and it's not, I don't know, let's say you have a cloth that's wool and you pick up the chilazon, you squeeze it to death, and again, not intentionally, let's say, and then the blood goes and dyes your wool cloth. If you didn't have in mind to kill it, you weren't trying to kill it, you weren't trying to color, so automatically this is downgraded. You may have accomplished the same thing, but your intent was not there. The Gemara says many times, the prerequisite for melacha, for it being considered melacha, is that it should be what's called two words, melechet machshevet, which means that you have to have in mind to accomplish this labor. If you accomplish this labor, but you had absolutely no intention to do it, so then that is something which the Torah does not consider melacha. For example, everybody always asks, are you allowed to walk on grass on Shabbat? What's the idea of walking on? Why would you not be allowed to walk on grass? Well, you might be uprooting grass. Well, who cares? What's uprooting grass? What is that? Oh, that's called plowing. Just like when you plow a field, you're uprooting the grass, you're making an area able to be planted. So too, if I walk on grass, I'm uprooting grass, I'm plowing, right? Let's assume that that's a correct statement, right? But that would be true if when you're walking on the grass, you're trying to uproot grass. Your intention is to uproot grass. You take a shovel, you dig, and you uproot the grass, right? And you make a hole. I'm trying to make a hole. I'm trying to uproot the grass. But if when you are walking on the grass, you have absolutely no intention of making a hole or uprooting anything or doing anything of that sort, so then there's nothing wrong with walking on the grass. Because part of the idea of melacha on Shabbat is that you intend to do it. You're trying to do it. If you are not trying to do it, you're actually doing something, you're involved in something totally different. I'm not involved in plowing. As a matter of fact, I'm involved in walking. Now, walking might result in plowing, right? It might result in that, but it's not what I'm trying to accomplish, right? So therefore, it's okay. Did you catch that? So therefore, can you walk on grass or not? The answer is, in most cases, the answer is yes. Because even if, let's say, I do uproot some grass, did I have in mind to do that? Was I trying to do that? No. Did I even know that was going to happen? No. So therefore, that would not fall into the category of melechet machshevet. Let's get the term clear. That, what I just told you right now, you need to know 3 words. Really, really, really important. And you know who said these 3 words actually? the great Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai famously said, Davar she'eino mitkaven mutar. Forward, sorry. Davar she'eino mitkaven, something which you don't have in mind, is permissible. Okay? Now, we're going to talk details about that. Don't go deciding things now just because you heard those 4 words, okay? Because it's very complicated. But you need to know the general principle. Is the general principle clear? Yes? So, yes.
Is that referring to the shogeg and the mezid? Is it the same thing or different?
So, no. So, shogeg, no. Shogeg means you did not have in mind you didn't realize what you were doing. You knew what you were doing, but you didn't, for example, let's say that you know that you're about to, you walk into the bathroom Shabbat morning, you flip the switch because that's your natural habit. You know, you walk into the bathroom, turn on the light, right? Natural instinct reaction, okay? You knew you're turning on a light. What were you missing? Exactly, you forgot that it's Shabbat because you did what you normally do on Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. But you forgot today, Shabbat. So you knew exactly what you're doing. You just missed one thing. Today's Shabbat. That's called shogeg. Shogeg means by accident.
By accident. like
You knew good and well what you're doing. You just forgot it's Shabbat. You understand?
Right.
Okay. Mezid would be, I know it's Shabbat and I did it anyway. I know it's Shabbat, I know it's forbidden, and I just did it anyway.
But that wouldn't be the same thing as doing something
That's intentional. Mezid means intentional.
Right.
Shogeg means unwittingly, and mezid means intentionally.
Can a high degree of negligence meet the requirement for being intentional?
Oh, that's a great question. So the answer is, it's going to depend. Here's the next point. So before we move to that point, which is excellent, do we have it down clear? I need you guys to know these words. Davar she'eino mitkaven mutar. Something which you don't have in mind is permissible. So you had in mind, let's say you have in mind to drag a table or a chair across the grass. Now again, you're not allowed to plow on Shabbat. So if you dig a ditch in the hole you dig a hole in the ground on Shabbat, it's plowing, it's bad. Can't have a ditch in the ground on Shabbat. But are you trying to make a ditch? No. Are you trying to make a hole? No. So you drag a chair across the grass on Shabbat, dragging it. And it actually ended up making some kind of a little hole over there. Was that allowed? Yes. Why was it allowed? Because did you have it in mind? No, you didn't have it in mind. You weren't trying to make a hole. You weren't trying to dig. You were involved in dragging a chair. It happened to have made a hole.
Should you try not to do it?
Oh, okay, very good. Now, part 2 of this halakha is that Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai admitted that although it's true that if you don't have it in mind, it's okay, but if you know for a fact that the act you're going to do will result in the ditch, you can't do it. So for example, if you know that chair that you're dragging, why are you dragging it? You know why? Because it's so heavy, super duper heavy. So you have no doubt at all that this chair is going to make a huge ditch in the ground. 100%, no question, it's gonna do it. There's no question about it. Then Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai admitted that you're not supposed to do that on Shabbat, it's forbidden. We now view it as if you had in mind to dig a ditch. Why? Because the whole thing to begin with was what? In the Mishkan, they intended to do the melacha that they were doing. This guy is not intending to do a melacha. He's just dragging a chair. It happened to make a ditch, but it's not what he was trying to do. Okay, yeah, but in this case, he knows it's going to do that. He knows 100% that that's what's going to happen. If you know for sure that that's going to be the result of your action, we view it as if you had it in mind for that to happen.
So knowledge equals intention.
Knowledge, but certain knowledge. In other words, if you have a question mark, if you are not sure, you say, listen, I'm going to drag this chair. Maybe it'll make a ditch. Maybe it won't make a ditch. No problem. Even if it made a ditch. Why? because it's not for sure that it's gonna make a ditch when I'm dragging the chair. It's not 100%. Maybe it will, maybe it won't. You understand? That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about you know for a fact this is gonna happen. You know for a fact, then we view it as if you wanted that to happen. That's an important point. Okay? Yes.
So even if there's like a 2% chance that it won't be like turn out to be malacha, it's okay.
2% is already
Like,
like
we're-
pushing it. Like, it's more like
what's
let's
the
say
percentage?
90%. You know,
Okay.
Okay.
there's a chance. No, there's a chance. There's a reasonable chance that nothing's gonna happen. You understand? A reasonable chance that nothing is going to take place. Now, the term for that is called Pesik Resha. You need to know these terms. The reason that I'm saying these things is because every little thing that we're going to learn, the laws of Shabbat, every case, these are the issues that we're going to be struggling with. So you have to get them out of the way now. Pesik Resha. Pei Samech Yud Kuf.
Doesn't
Pesik.
it have to do with cutting the head of the chicken?
Correct. We'll explain in a moment. Very good. Beautiful. Okay. Pesik Resha. Reish Yud Shin Aleph.
That
Or
refers
in
to
English,
which concept?
what?
That refers to which concept?
The second concept, that if
That
you
is
know
question-
for a
Oh,
fact
that you know for a
that
fact.
it's gonna happen, you can't do it. Okay? So now,
Hold on one second.
Seek. if you know for a fact that your action, even though you aren't trying to do a melacha, but you know the action will result in a melacha, you cannot do it. Sorry, is it clear so far, so good? Yeah? Okay, great. Fantastic. Okay. So, Pesik Resha means literally chop off the head. Chop off the head. Pesik means to cut, Resha, the head. So the Rambam explains, what does that mean, Pesik Resha? He says, you can't, let's say you need a toy for your kid. So, they didn't have, I don't know, chutes and ladders. So they had chickens. So you go to the chicken, and you need, the kids like chickens, like chicken heads, let's say. You're not gonna give the kid a whole chicken, you give them a chicken head. So you go to the chicken, you chop off its head, and you give the head to the kid to play with. So says the Rambam, Pesik Resha v'lo yamut. What do you mean? You're gonna try and say, well, I didn't have in mind to kill the chicken. I just wanted its head as a toy for the kid. Says the Rambam, that's ridiculous, right? You can't say that, right? That's ridiculous. You can't say, I'm gonna kill it, I'm gonna chop off its head and it's not gonna die. You can't say, I didn't have in mind to kill it. The act you were doing was an act of killing, right? So if the action that you're doing by default will result in a melacha, then that is something which is forbidden to do. Okay? So that's the term Pesik Resha. Clear? So far, so good?
Pesik Resha literally means chop off.
Chop off the head, right? Pesik Resha. Okay. We have a lot more intro to go, but I think we might be at time for tonight. Maybe we'll stop over here and we'll pick it up next week. Next week is going to be part 2 of the intro. So we
How
still.
many classes is this? I feel like this is an endless.
This is a long series, guys. This is a long series. We'll stop over here.
300